It started with a leak in the ceiling above the third-floor server room. Not a metaphor, just a literal drip, drip, drip from an HVAC pipe no one had checked since the last fiscal year. But Judith noticed. She always noticed. She rerouted the access points, logged a maintenance request, flagged the risk to facilities, and even added a line item to the quarterly compliance report before most of the exec team had finished their acai bowls and grind set podcasts. She wasn't looking for praise, she just didn't want another compliance meltdown like last year's fiasco, when a junior analyst deleted a month's worth of audit logs thinking logs meant calendar entries. That was Judith, 9 years in, watchful, precise, invisible. She could smell chaos before it arrived, the same way most people smell burnt toast. She wasn't loud in meetings, her name wasn't plastered across company values slides. Some new hires didn't even know what her title meant, but when the CEO's quarterly report hit the boardroom without a single error, everyone relaxed. When third-party vendors asked about due diligence, her email address was copied automatically, and when the company renewed their $200 million enterprise contract last fall, her signature, buried 3 pages deep in the SOC2 documentation, was the quiet line that made the deal possible. Judith didn't need applause, she needed order. Her desk was a portrait of restraint, one mug that read "Documentation is sexy," a stapler, and a small glass owl someone gave her at an off-site retreat she deliberately skipped. She didn't gossip, she didn't post Slack emojis, she didn't join karaoke nights, but when legal needed vendor records at 4 p.m. on a Friday, they came to her. When IT saw suspicious logins at 2 a.m., they checked with her first. Judith was the quiet fuse box behind the blinking lights. No one noticed her, until something went dark. And she was fine with that. She'd grown up in a house where being noticed usually meant someone was shouting. Her father, when bills were late. Her mother, when silence broke into anger. Judith learned young that quiet could be a shield, and later, a form of control. But lately, even that quiet had started to hum. The new leadership had arrived, glossy, young, full of buzzwords, transformation, they said, efficiency, agility. It started subtly, skipped invites, overwritten memos, reports she prepared presented by someone else with prettier slides, her metrics, her language, her footnotes, twisted and rebranded. Judith recognized erosion when she saw it. Her job had never been glamorous, but now it was turning into a liability, a relic. Still, she kept the machine humming, audits prepped months ahead, vendor risk assessments spotless, every policy cross-referenced and versioned. If they wanted her gone, they'd have to fire her while everything was still perfect. That was her silent rebellion. They could pretend she didn't matter, but they couldn't pretend her work didn't. The first time Judith saw him, he was standing in the break room, pointing at the TV. "Needs to be bigger," he said to the facilities guy, "like 85 inches, at least. You can't inspire innovation on a small screen." He wore a watch that cost more than Judith's rent and a Bluetooth headset he didn't need. His name was Trent Calder, VP of Strategic Growth. The kind of man who said, "We're a family here," with the same breath he used to demand layoffs by Friday. His first presentation was titled Unleashing the Future, From Static to Scalable. Judith's inbox hit triple digits before he finished saying, "Synergy." She wasn't allergic to change, she'd outlasted 3 CEOs and a merger. But this was different. Trent wasn't here to build, he was here to cut. By his second week, he'd rewritten org charts, introduced buzzwords no one understood, and started talking about sunsetting low-visibility roles. She didn't need to ask what that meant. Then came the town hall. Trent perched on a tall stool like a stand-up comic and clicked through slides, guardrails versus green lights, one red. "And this is what's slowing us down," he said, pointing at a flowchart of the compliance workflow. "Legacy review gates, obsolete safeguards. We need disruptors, not gatekeepers." He smiled, then added, "No offense to anyone in compliance." All eyes turned to Judith. She didn't blink, didn't speak, just smiled faintly, pen poised, and noted the time, 2:47 p.m., first public strike. She'd seen this before, the joke that isn't a joke. The tone that shifts just enough to isolate you. By Friday, she noticed 2 of her documents marked read-only. Someone had restricted her access. When she brought Trent a color-coded SOC2 recertification plan, standard onboarding, he barely glanced at it. "I'll have my assistant digest this," he said. "I'm focused on macro strategy." Macro strategy. Judith almost laughed. By week 3, she was uninvited from vendor calls. Someone quietly relabeled her department as non-revenue generating. No pink slip, no confrontation, just silence, strategically applied. They wanted her to quit. She caught her reflection in the dark glass one night, alone again, the last to leave. She looked like a ghost holding a security badge. 9 years, no complaints, no errors, no scandals. And now she was being erased by a man who thought risk register meant to register risk-taking employees. She stopped sending escalation memos. No one read them anyway. Instead, she started documenting everything else: conversations, changes, approvals that weren't approved, Slack screenshots, meeting notes. Not for revenge, not yet. For insurance. In her world, documentation wasn't busy work, it was armor. Trent passed her desk one afternoon, fake laughing into his headset. "Morning, Janet," he said absently. Her name was Judith. It was the 3rd time. She smiled politely, but something inside her shifted, something cold and sharp. He thought she was harmless, invisible, a relic. But Judith wasn't dead weight, she was the load-bearing wall holding this whole building upright. And he'd just started drilling through her foundation. She gave him 3 chances, not because she liked him, but because she believed in protocol, documentation, orientation, proper transfer of knowledge. She'd seen men like him implode before, loud, fast, reckless, always convinced they were streamlining. Judith didn't plan to stop him. She planned to outlast him. And when the storm came, and she knew it would, she'd be the only one with proof of how it started. A single leak, a single drip, drip, drip. Ignored by everyone. Except Judith. Always Judith. Because that person, she was already gone. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, gone, badge turned in, account deactivated, chair empty. And for the first few days, the absence was invisible, like a missing screw in a machine that still hummed, right up until the rattle began. The first hiccup came on Monday morning, not a crash, not even a visible spark, just a soft red flag on the security dashboard. An unread admin login from a foreign IP, tied to one of their third-party data processors. The system did what it was designed to do, logged it, snoozed it, flagged it for compliance review. Except there was no one to review it. Compliance, it turned out, was now just a shared folder and a 26-year-old junior analyst named Kevin, on board 6 weeks ago to learn the ropes. Kevin, who still used sticky notes for passwords. Kevin, who thought mitigation strategy was a kind of insurance policy. Kevin, who once asked if in point meant the same as deadline. He messaged the risk inbox for help. No reply. By Tuesday, the single red flag had multiplied into 5. Procurement pinged operations. One of the newer vendors hadn't submitted their third-party attestation forms. It wasn't a crisis, unless you understood the clause buried inside the enterprise contract requiring all subprocessors to be verified and documented before Q4 expansion. Judith had written that clause. Judith had lived that clause. But legal didn't catch it this time, too busy redlining NDAs from Trent's new, fast-track rollout project. And Kevin didn't catch it because, well, Kevin thought SOC2 was an antivirus software. By Wednesday, quiet panic began to ripple. Someone in IT tried to open Judith's old compliance folder, locked. Her drive had been archived within minutes of her offboarding. Standard protocol. Except standard doesn't mean prepared. The SOC2 documentation library, empty. The credential management tool, inaccessible. The vendor risk matrix, last seen as a printout on her desk, likely shredded or recycled days ago. A product VP slacked IT. "Hey, who's responsible for SOC2 certification now?" No response. Someone else opened the org chart. Judith's team had technically been moved under operations, but no new lead was assigned. The Slack channel #risk and compliance sat frozen. Last message timestamped 6:42 p.m. Judith's final note. Final review done. Controls pass. Flagging vendor X for research. And then, nothing. Like the last echo in a canyon. Trent Calder remained calm, at least on camera. He started tossing around phrases like redistributed accountability and cross-functional agility. But his voice cracked a little during the Thursday sync when the client account manager asked, "So, who exactly is our named certification officer now?" He smiled, tight-lipped. "We'll circle back on that," he said, "by end of day." Meanwhile, Judith watered her garden. It was the hydrangeas this time, their leaves curling at the edges from the early autumn sun. She clipped the brown petals, turned the soil, and shifted the pot a few feet into the shade. Her phone buzzed twice on the porch table, company number, no caller ID. She didn't move. Just let it ring. Birdsong. A lawnmower somewhere down the street. The faint click of the wind chimes she didn't remember buying. Peace, unbroken. Inside Brightwell Systems, Kevin had reached his breaking point. He burst into the compliance Slack. "Does anyone know where the risk control calendar is, or who signs off the SOC2 logs?" Silence. Then Trent replied, "Don't worry, team, I've got it covered." He didn't. Not even remotely. The system Judith had built, every control, timestamp, and attestation, was still running, but without her, it was running blind. It wasn't chaos yet, not loud chaos, anyway. It was structured panic. The kind that hums under fluorescent lights and smells like burnt coffee and fear. The data didn't care that Trent liked buzzwords. The logs didn't care that Kevin was trying. The system was ticking, quiet, relentless, unfeeling. And the one person who could make sense of it all was pruning hydrangeas, 3 miles away. Friday morning. The email arrived at 8:43 a.m. Subject line, SOC2 verification, urgent request, from Compliance Council, Hallard Solutions, to Partner Account Team, Brightwell Systems. Please confirm the contact details of your current SOC2 certification officer. We're conducting a standard mid-cycle audit as per Clause 8.2.2. Kindly respond by COB today. No emojis, no urgency in tone, just corporate calm, the kind that hides a ticking clock behind every word. At first, no one flinched. Routine audit request, happens every few months. The email bounced through 4 inboxes before landing in Trent's at 9:17 a.m. He replied cheerfully, "We'll circle back shortly, appreciate the ping." Then he slacked Kevin. No response. Then he slacked legal. The paralegal replied, "I thought Judith was still the POC." That was the moment, the quiet click of realization, the first crack in the glass. Trent opened the SOC2 folder himself. Empty. Access restricted. Judith's credentials long revoked. He called IT. "We can't access the certification files," he said, voice trembling. IT replied, "We followed protocol. She never submitted a transition plan." He called HR. "Why wasn't I looped on her offboarding?" HR. "You were. You're listed as her manager." He wasn't sure what stung more, the incompetence, or the mirror it held up. By 11:02 a.m., 3 directors were CC'd on the thread. By 11:37, legal added the COO. Kevin finally messaged back. "Sorry, I don't know what a certification officer does. Is that like a notary?" By noon, the office was humming with something sour and electric. The realization didn't arrive all at once. It crept in, like water rising under a locked door. Judith's name was on every compliance report, every control log, every certification letter. Her digital signature, encrypted, timestamped, verified, was the legal backbone of Brightwell's $200 million contract. Clause 14.3b was clear. Verification must be performed by the named certification officer or a formally transitioned successor. There was no successor. And without her sign-off, Brightwell wasn't compliant. Without compliance, the contract wasn't valid. And without that contract, Brightwell Systems wasn't worth the paper their IPO deck was printed on.